Hello everyone and welcome to your favorite chat show, Ladies Lounge. My name is Ejiro and I have a special guest, Dr. Adeola Olaitan. Dr. Adeola Olaitan is a consultant gynecologist, University College London Hospitals NHS Foundation. It's great to have you on our show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. So we started this very important topic on cervical screening, and definitely we all know that it's an old-time one, but we have to refresh ourselves because it's definitely still ongoing. I want to throw this question to you. So back to the basics. What is cervical screening, and why is it necessary for our women to do it?
So cervical screening is important because it protects women against cervical cancer. The cervix, first of all, just to explain the anatomy of it, is the neck of the womb. It's the bit that expands so that babies can be born. Now, the cervix can have changes which are not cancer, but if undetected and untreated, can put women at risk of cancer.
Oh, okay. So what age group? For example, I have a daughter who's 10. Is there a certain age group that have to go for the test, and how often do they have to go for the test?
So screening starts from the age of 25.
Okay.
And from 25 to 50, it's every 3 years, assuming the screening has been normal, that it hasn't picked up any abnormalities. And then from the age of 50 to 64, it's every 5 years.
What's the difference between cervical screening and smear test? Because smear test is the term we knew for a very long time.
I was just going to go.
Yeah. So what's the difference?
Cervical screening, I think, is a more appropriate term because it describes what actually happens. Women are screened to protect them against cancer. The test, I suppose, is a smear test. It's when the cells are taken from the cervix and looked at in the lab. So essentially, they're the same thing. It's been rebranded as cervical screening because I think that's more descriptive and more appropriate.
Yeah.
And when I was researching about this, I saw a test called a pap test. Is that different from the cervical screening?
It's the same test. It's known by lots of different names. And just out of interest, it was first developed many years ago by a Greek guy called Papa Nikolaou. So it was known as the Papa Nikolaou smear.
Oh, okay.
And now
I knew it was
smear.
Yeah.
I need to pap smear as well.
Yeah. So it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Screening.
Americans call it pap smear. We tend to just call it smear or screening.
We've heard about the new Cervical Screening Saves Lives campaign. What's the aim of this campaign and why is it happening now? What's the reason why it has to be at this particular time?
The aim of the campaign is to encourage more women to give cervical screening, and this is because despite the success of the screening program, the attendance at screening is at an all-time low. It's the lowest it's been for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And 2 women a day still die of cervical cancer, which is a tragedy because it's a potentially preventable disease. So the aim of the campaign is to demystify screening, to inform women about it, to dispel the myths, and to encourage women to take up their screening invitation.
What's the reason why you think women are not actually doing the test? Because obviously saving life, you can save your life by going for the screening. What's the reason for women not to?
Absolutely. So the reason women don't go for screening is multitude. I think one is a misunderstanding about the test. The second is people often say that they feel embarrassed about the test. It's interesting because the same people who are embarrassed about the test will go for a bikini line wax.
Well, true.
That's a good way to put it.
Absolutely.
In terms of embarrassment and pain. And it's interesting, this morning I was answering questions from a journalist about women's perception of their labia, and a lot of people feel embarrassed because they think that their genitals look different from someone else's. And I think it's important to understand nobody's judging you, and no 2 labia are the same, in the same way as no 2 faces are the same. So, comparing yourself with another person and thinking mine doesn't look like that actually doesn't matter. The people who do the tests are professionals. They'll put you at your ease and they will do the test. But I think there's a lot of, misunderstanding about what happens when you go for a test. And
can you choose which sex of practitioner or nurse to have? Is it mainly women or do we have men as well?
Good question. Yeah. If you want a woman, request a woman, and that you will be accommodated. You know.
So when you say a lot of women, is it a black woman thing? Because we've heard before that black women, a lot of black women don't like to go. Is there a reason why black women in particular?
I didn't know about that.
There is some evidence that black women are less likely to go for screening tests.
Okay.
And again, it's interesting because we looked at this a few years ago, and we did a study going to black hairdressers, where's the best place to find black women on a Saturday afternoon.
And get hairdressers. Oh, of course.
And we got them to fill in a questionnaire about whether A, they were aware of cervical screening, and whether or not they attended, and if they didn't, why they didn't. And it's interesting because the reasons are no different in general from the general public. Access, lack of time, if you don't live near where your GP surgery is, that causes difficulties. One group was people who had a religious faith, whatever it was, they believed that they were protected. And the other is this idea that if you are promiscuous, you're more likely to get cervical cancer. And I think it's important to discuss this because it's
It's important that you throw more light on that.
Nothing to do with promiscuity.
I would never have thought.
I think I need you to say that again, that promiscuity has nothing to do with cervical screening or cervical cancer or whatever.
It absolutely doesn't. And, you can have one sexual partner and still be at risk. So I think it's important to dispel that myth.
Yes.
And everybody's at risk, and therefore everybody should go for regular screening.
Can you explain, for a lady who hasn't had a test before and she's going for the cervical screening test, what would she expect? What are the timings? And
so generally speaking, when you come for a test, you will meet either a nurse or a doctor who will explain what the test involves to you. I think it's quite helpful to look at the equipment because people talk about the equipment being difficult or painful. It isn't. So all that we have here is a small instrument which is called a speculum, and the speculum goes into the vagina to part the lips of the vagina so that the cervix, which sits on top of the vagina, becomes visible. And then with this very soft brush, the cells that are shed from the cervix are collected. So you're not scraping or removing anything. It's cells that are naturally shed. They're collected by this brush and then suspended in a liquid. The actual test itself, the taking of the smear, probably takes a couple of minutes.
Would they usually put like a gel on the tip of that? Because I'm going to ask a very practical question. Sometimes we are dry down there and it's, so would they usually, is there something applied?
Very good question. And I omitted to say this is very well lubricated.
Okay.
It would never be put in
so
without
it won't
lots of
hurt.
lubricants. Yeah, exactly.
It'll just slide in.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed. Yeah.
So, doctor, how often are women meant to go for this screening?
Screening starts from the age of 25 and it's every 3 years if your screening is normal. And if you've attended regularly and your screening has been normal, when you get to the age of 50, it becomes every 5 years. The majority of women will have negative smears, in other words, normal screening. And if your screening is normal, whatever the abnormality is treatable. So if the abnormality is not going to be cancer, the result might say that you have some abnormalities on the cervix which need more investigation, and you're likely then to be referred to hospital. A smear is a screening test. It's not a diagnostic test. If the smear is abnormal, you get referred to hospital for a more detailed test to find out whether indeed there is a problem, and if there's a problem, fully treatable. And 19 out of 20 women only need one treatment. Essentially, it just takes away the area of abnormal cells.
And I think hearing this is it takes away the myth, but for me, personally, it takes away the fear of having it. Because even if there's something, even if the cells are not normal, it's easily treatable.
Indeed.
And the earlier we do it, and the more often you do it, you have better chances of surviving.
Okay. Just a quick question. I'm not sure if I'm digressing, but now a situation where you have because 3 to 5 years and you don't get a letter from your GP saying come for your smear test. Do you alert your GP? Do you just on your own discretion just go and just say, hey GP, I need to come see you?
Absolutely. So you're saying if you don't get your reminder letter?
That's right.
No, absolutely. I think we do need to take some responsibility for our own health. And if you think 3 years have gone by and you haven't got the letter, could have got left in the post. Ring up the GP surgery.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I haven't gotten it.
I haven't gotten it, and I know why I changed addresses.
That's so important. Phone up, because the letter's gone somewhere else, and make your appointment.
Okay.
And even if you're listening to this program and you got a letter 6 months ago and you ignored it and buried it with your bills, it's not too late. Phone up, say I got a screening letter 6 months ago. I'd like to make an appointment. you'll still be accommodated.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I think going back to talking about the tests when you go, is there any tips you can give to women to make them more comfortable, to make it a more, easier experience for them?
Bearable.
Bearable experience. That's the word I was looking
Bearable.
for. Thank you.
So I think it's important, particularly if you're nervous or anxious about the test, to tell the smear taker that you are nervous or anxious.
Okay.
Then come appropriately clothed. You know that you're going to have to be bare from waist down. So if you wear a loose skirt, if you wear clothing that you can get out of more easily, then again that just helps you to be more relaxed. There is a very small group of women who find this test very difficult and they're very tense. And I think it's important to discuss that before you start the test, because what we don't want is for the test to be so unpleasant that it puts you off going
Again.
further tests.
Doctor, I was just thinking that is this test free? Because a lot of people are going to be wondering, do they have to pay for it? Or is it completely free?
The test is completely free. If you are registered with a GP, you're eligible, you get your letter, there's no charge. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Deola. Olaitan, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you so much. It's really been lovely having you with us again, and we'll be seeing you soon.